DECA BA Core Communication Skills Part 1. Identify sources that provide relevant, valid written material. So the goal of this essentially is to evaluate the credibility of a given source and analyzing that credibility when evaluating it for a research report. And the key here that you want to use or also you want to talk about in your roleplay presentation is the review method. The review method is R, find the relevance to your topic. First, make sure that the article or whatever you're reviewing is relevant to your topic. E, verify the expertise of the author and make sure the author themselves are credible. V, the viewpoint of the author, make sure to weigh in any biases that could be involved. I, the intended audience, you want to make sure that the tone is informative, not necessarily persuasive. E, you want to look at the evidence presented in the argument and see if there's any loopholes or again bias there. And lastly, W, when was it published? Because this could be an important factor as the currentness of these articles does matter, especially when talking about business. Extract relevant information from written materials. So there are three key steps to doing this. Number one is to pre-read. And when you're pre-reading, the main thing you want to do is to set a goal of what you want to extract and also scan through the information based on your goals and find what's relevant to your goal. And you always want to pay close attention to the introductions and the summaries, as they'll keep the information you read in context. I would also recommend keeping a checklist in your pre-reading process, and of course, pre-reading does take a little bit longer. You keep a checklist because that will help you in the review portion specifically. When you're reading, again, you want to read specifically for the information you need based on your goal, and of course, if you can, jot down some short notes for review. And lastly, for review, you want to review based on your goals set prior to reading, and this is where the checklist would come in handy. You can go through your checklist and make sure you've read and understood and comprehended everything related to the checklist, and also go over your notes if you took them to confirm that, again, you went over the checklist. Apply written directions to achieve tasks. So this one's a really straightforward one, but sometimes that guys might want you to explain that in a roleplay situation. So this is, again, straightforward. You just want to read the directions all the way through first and reread if necessary for comprehension. Then after that, you want to follow the written instructions step by step to the letter, right? And as you're following these instructions, you want to keep these instructions visible while doing them, as it helps to ensure you are following every single step. And again, as I mentioned earlier, in a roleplay situation, make sure to outline this structure as an effective way or as a way to enhance the effectiveness of written instructions, right? Like if your plan in a roleplay is to implement written instructions in some way or the other, make sure to point this out and say that you want to have this kind of program, this kind of policy in place. Analyze company resources to ascertain policies and procedures. This is just kind of making sure that the policies and the operations of the business are, intact and, agree with each other. So again, as I mentioned, you want to ensure the policies are up to date, especially with new technology nowadays. You want to make sure that your policies and protocols are relevant. You also want to get opinions from information system leads, as they are the ones who are specialized in this task, and any feedback from them would be really helpful. You also want to send out a survey to garner employee opinions, as the more involved employees feel in this process, the more likely they are to follow these policies and procedures. And lastly, you want to follow up with any changes you do end up making to the policy and make sure to, again, communicate this with the employees, as you want to make sure everyone is staying up to the same page. And this will ensure that everyone is aware of exactly what changes have been made and how they can work with the alterations that affect them. And lastly, explain communication techniques that support and encourage a speaker. So this is from the audience's perspective. And as an audience, you want to be actively listening. And this can be shown through questions, for example, asking them, if given time, of course, or nodding along throughout the presentation. You can also take notes if it's practical. I know not all of us are note takers, but if you feel like you can and it might add value to you, you should definitely do it. You also want to engage with the speaker when given the opportunity. For example, if the speaker asks a question throughout the presentation, you want to make sure to raise your hand and answer it, or if they're looking for a vote, raise your hand, things like that. And lastly, of course, you want to maintain eye contact with the speaker and make sure your full attention is given to them. And that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope we can see you guys next time.